Okay, let's take a look at two-step inequalities. So we're going to be solving two-step inequalities by solving for the variable and graphing. Do not forget that an open circle means the value is not included. We would be using a greater than or less than sign for that. A filled in circle means that the value is included. We would be using a greater than or equal to or less than or equal to sign for that. Let's go ahead and look at our first problem. Our first problem says -3 open parentheses p plus 1 close parentheses less than or equal to -8. I'm going to go ahead and write it off to the side a little bit to have a little bit more space. Okay, so remember, when we have a problem like this with the parentheses, we want to make sure that we either use the box method, and that means that we're multiplying because this means distribution. If I were to use the box method, it would look like this. -3 p plus 1. So -3 times p would give me -3p, and -3 times 1 would just give me -3. So when I bring it all down, my new problem would be -3p minus 3 is less than or equal to -18. Now I can go ahead and continue solving. Remember, with problems like these, two steps, we want to leave this part for last. So I'm going to go ahead and start by doing the inverse of subtraction, which is addition. So I'm going to add a 3 to both sides. This would give me 0, and -3 plus -18 plus 3 would give me -15. Make sure, if you're doing it in your head, that you're still checking on your calculator just in case. So now for our second step. From here, I can go ahead and divide both sides by -3. Remember, when you divide or multiply by a negative number, you need to flip your sign to keep your inequality true. So this would give me 1, which would make me bring down the p. I would flip my sign, and -15 divided by -3 would give me +5. So my answer is p is greater than or equal to +5. Now I'm going to come over and graph. So remember that greater than or equal to would be a closed circle because it includes the answer. So I'm going to go ahead and put a closed circle on 5. And because p is greater than or equal to 5, remember our little graph the other day. And if you didn't get a chance to write it down, to the left are our smallest numbers, and to the right are our biggest. So I'm going to go ahead and graph to the right because it's greater than or equal to. Now let's go ahead and look at our next problem. Okay, let's go ahead and look at our second problem. It's -b minus 2 is greater than 8. So let's go ahead and start with our first step. Remember, we leave this one for last. So I'm going to go ahead and do the inverse of subtraction and add 2. Remember, we're doing it to both sides because it's a balance. I'm going to go ahead and cross this out because it gives me 0, and 8 plus 2 gives me 10. Bring down my negative b, greater than sign. Now I have a negative next to my b, which means I still need to get rid of it. So I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by negative 1. Because remember, in front of that b, there's an invisible 1. So the negative is going to give me just positive 1, so I bring down my b. But remember, I divided by a negative number, so that means I need to flip my sign to keep it true. And then 10 divided by negative 1 gives me negative 10. So my answer is b is less than negative 10. Now remember, with the less than sign, that means I have an open circle. So I'm going to go ahead and come over to my negative 10 and put an open circle. B is less than. So that means my answers or my solutions need to be smaller than negative 10. So I would graph in the direction of the negative 12. Let's go ahead and check out our next problem. Okay, so our next problem is 4 plus n over 3 is less than 6. I want you to go ahead and take a minute to try and solve it on your own. Okay, now that you've taken a minute to try and solve, let's go ahead and work on it together. Remember, we want to leave this for last. So I'm going to start with my 4. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 4 from both sides. This gives me 0, and 6 minus 4 gives me 2. I'm going to go ahead and bring down my n over 3. So remember, when we have n over 3, that means we're dividing. So the inverse would be to multiply. I'm going to multiply on both sides. This would go ahead and give me 1, so I bring down my n. I bring down my inequality, and 2 times 3 is 6. So my answer is n is less than 6. Remember, this gives me an open circle, so I'm going to go ahead and put an open circle on 6. Because n is less than 6, I'm going to go ahead and graph to the left. Let's go ahead and look at the next problem. This one says negative 7x plus 7 is less than or equal to negative 56. Remember, I'm going to box this off because I'm going to leave it for last. So I'm going to do the inverse of addition, and I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. 7 minus 7 gives me 0. And negative 56 minus 7 gives me negative 63. I'm going to go ahead and bring down my negative 7x and my less than or equal to sign. Now I can go ahead and divide both sides by negative 7. Negative 7 divided by negative 7 gives me 1, so I bring down my x. Remember, we're dividing by a negative number, so I'm going to flip my sign to make it true. And negative 63 divided by negative 7 gives me 9. So our answer is x is greater than or equal to 9. Remember, that means we're going to have a closed circle. So I'm going to go ahead and put a closed circle on my 9. And because x is greater than or equal to, I am graphing to the right. Now you're going to go ahead and do your last problem. Our last problem is negative 8 plus r all over 2 is greater than negative 8. Go ahead and solve this on your own. You can go ahead and pause the video and then check and see if how I did it is how you did it. Now you can see we got r is greater than negative 8. We graphed with an open circle to the right. I hope this helped. Let me know if you need any more help.